Good morning, and thank you for tuning in to Wake Up with Edie Darling. I'm your host and ambassador of peace, Edie Darling, and I truly count it a joy and a blessing to speak life into your life. For the first time listeners out there, and for my valued, growing, and listening audience, I want to thank you for tuning in weekly. Now, before I get into today's inspiring episode, I would like to personally thank my husband, Chris Guay, for constantly encouraging me to walk out my God given purpose. I would also like to thank the sponsors of this show, WUJM 99 Jams, The Berg, Groove Hub Nation, and Craig Daniels for their support. And to you, my listening audience, my desire is to awaken you to the awareness and knowledge that we are not alone. We are family, regardless of our race, our ethnic background, our cultural differences, our religious beliefs, our political affiliation, our sexual orientation, whether we are rich or poor, we are one body. What happens to one impacts the lives of all. This show builds bridges of compassion for God's diverse people through faith, hope, and love. It encourages you on your journey to do more and be more in God. It will inspire you and motivate you to think outside of tradition and prepare you for your greatest potential on becoming a well-rounded individual in mind, body, and soul by focusing on the here and now, the new day that you have been blessed to see. For the time is now to awaken your dormant gifts. This show also actively seeks to bridge the gap between community and law enforcement relations by bringing the community, leaders, citizens, and law enforcement together at a round table of peace to address any issue that negatively impacts our communities, impede the safety of all, inhibit investigation, hamper police relations, and tear at the very fiber of our human condition and jeopardizes humanity. Now, on today's episode titled Redefining You, I have the honor to have across from me a dear friend of mine, Dr. Carleah East. Dr. East is a clinical psychotherapist, a licensed mental health counselor, and the founding CEO of Smile Psychology and Associates LLC, a clinical group practice, and the executive director of Sapphire Woman Pathways, which supports women offenders by providing pathways of counseling, education, and community growth. Dr. East earned a Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology from the University of Central Florida, a Master's of Arts degree in Mental Health Counseling from Argosy University, and a PhD in General Psychology at Capella University. She is also the author of 2 books, The Hangover, Overcoming Emotional Addiction, and Don't Wait for Love, Become Love. In addition, Dr. East is an empowerment coach, and on her platform, Dr. East Speaks, she empowers high-achieving women to redefine resiliency so she can embrace her authentic life. Lastly, she is also a clinical correspondent with BayNews 9 and Channel 9 News. Good morning, Dr. East. Thank you for coming on to Wake Up with Edie Darling to share tips with our listening audience and audience as we discuss this very powerful topic, redefining you.
Good morning, Edie. Thank you so much for having me. I am super excited about bringing these nuggets to the audience because redefining yourself is an ongoing process that never ends.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that, okay? So when catastrophic events or traumatic events happen in an individual's life, where does a person begin to redefine themselves?
I think the first step is we have to recognize that things are out of order.
Yeah.
And be okay with things being out of order.
Yeah.
We have to understand that when we are looking at how we embrace trauma, we have to look at how we define trauma, how we define the need to respond.
Mm-hmm.
And then that means understanding stereotypes that come through, right? Oftentimes in a catastrophe, we are taught to be strong, be resilient, right? And ever push forward. But I think oftentimes we have to begin to redefine what resiliency is.
Yes.
What exactly does that mean, right? So most basic definitions will tell you, resiliency is the ability to keep moving, to keep pushing forward. But I think on the other end of that spectrum, what we also have to know is that resiliency is knowing when to rest. Resiliency is knowing when to pause and allow that process of healing, of grief, of understanding, of research to take place so then we can move forward.
Yeah.
So we've got to redefine what resiliency even looks like for us in the first place.
You know, when I think about hearing that, you know, all of these thoughts come into my mind about different things that we all have experienced. But you hear your mama, your grandmama, all these people in your life tell you just pull up your big girl panties and just move on. Go to work. Keep it moving.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it becomes almost a battle with ourselves emotionally that if we don't, quote unquote, keep it moving, then we're failing.
Right.
Then we're defeated. Then we're being punks. You know what I mean? Or we're being weak.
Yes.
That's what it comes out to. And the truth is that our fights aren't the same as our ancestors' fights.
Right.
Not saying that we aren't fighting for the same opportunities, equalities, equitable opportunities. Absolutely. I'm here for it.
Right.
But the way in which we progress and the way in which we begin to digress is definitely rooted in the messaging that we continue to absorb, right?
Yes.
And so redefining it means understanding that my ability to rest is what gives me the energy and to restore myself so that I can do the work.
Absolutely.
So that I can fight the fight, so that I continue to move forward.
You know, I'm so grateful that you are here because, again, as you're talking, I think about those individuals who are in a place, they find themselves in a dark place, but they don't want to seek help from a psychologist or a psychiatrist to help them process these things in order to get these tips and more to help us get through those traumatic incidences in our lives.
Right.
So thank you for taking this time out to give these tidbit nuggets to take along with us. Yeah.
The acknowledgement is hard.
Yeah.
It's like I have to acknowledge that I got issues.
Right.
I have to acknowledge that I'm not doing well.
Or that I'm exactly. Or that I'm dealing with something that happened to me, but I don't know how to process that, or I become angry, or all of these things.
I think a lot of times it's the fact that we're upset that we're upset.
Right.
You know, it's like I've worked very hard to be resilient, right? I've worked very hard to be strong, and yet I'm allowing myself, we take full responsibility for it, which is not ours. It's a human emotion, right? I'm allowing myself to be upset about what my job did to me, or what my, date did to me, or, what my health outcome is. I'm upset about these things, and that upsets me to be upset.
Right.
And I think because we have defined those areas that need accommodations as actual areas of weaknesses, that's when we have the problem.
Yeah.
And that inherently, especially for people of color, comes from a historical reference.
Yeah.
It comes from that space.
Yeah.
Because when you look at African Americans or people of color in general, and how we were regulated and rated based upon our skin tone, based upon our abilities or inabilities, right? If there was something wrong with us, quote unquote, if we had gout, if we had high blood pressure, if we had a lazy eye, if we had one arm shorter than the other, you were automatically devalued, right? You might have had 5 zeros after a 1, and now you only have 1 0. Right. So you went from $1,000 to being, $1 million to being worth 10.
Right.
That is the narrative. And that has been the narrative, especially for our males, right? And our females as well, but we know the message gets harder for our males. And so when that becomes the message through us, through our ancestry, then that imprints on our brains to where if there's something's wrong with us, it's considered a weakness, and therefore I am now broken, bruised, fractured, and therefore less valuable than I was before. Right. And I think the problem is that we've allowed certain, westernized societies and racism and that type of isms to play a role and kind of veil us in how we view our own health, how we view our own mental health, or physical health, or sexual health, or spiritual health. And if we're not marching correctly to the beat of the drum that we should, then there's something wrong with us. And there is, and it's called humanity. It's called growth. Because in order for you to grow, you have to hurt, you have to heal, because that's what healing is.
Right.
When kids grow and they get taller, they complain about their joints hurting.
Yes,
it's science, people. Okay, it's a known
My
fact.
grandson actually tells me all the time, "Grandma, my feet hurt."
My feet hurt.
Yes,
my ankles hurt. My knees,
Yeah,
right. Like they're 80, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, you're 8. What is the problem?
Right.
But they're stretching, they're growing, and so in that expansion and that growth can be taxing. It pulls you. And so we need to understand that when we are put up against something that we feel is a struggle, we have to, secondly, redefine that as a challenge.
Yeah.
Because the struggle is something that you think you can't overcome, no
Right.
matter how small it is. Just hearing the word struggle, I'm just exhausted saying it. I mean, just think about how much you have to do with your mouth to say struggle. Like, it just takes so much energy. But when you're challenged, there's a buck up that happens in the chest area. Like, you know what I'm saying?
I got this.
I'm in the room now.
Right.
You know, there's some air you take in when you're being challenged.
Yes.
Because the way we view a challenge is, I can conquer it.
Yes.
I know I can.
Yes.
They trying me. Oh, I know I can get this done.
Yes.
So we have to start reframing the way we think about our health in all those previous areas as challenges and not struggles.
Right.
And then understanding that me knowing the truth about my deficit, me knowing the truth about areas that need accommodations and support is not a weakness.
Right.
That's an advantage.
Right.
Because now I can put in place the things that I need to, so I can be better. So that little short foot, I can get me a long shoe.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
So now I'm tall.
Right.
Exactly. You know, now I'm matching on both ends.
Exactly.
It's about us being able to say, I am a human being first.
Yes.
And as I'm growing, I need to know I'm pliable, but I also need to know I'm fixable.
Yes.
I'm mendable and I'm moldable.
Yes.
And that means being able to face and acknowledge me, love all the things in me, right? Which takes work every single day, but not ignoring them.
Right.
Embracing them, because that's the only way you can conquer it.
Right.
Is if you acknowledge it and embrace it.
Wow. This is so powerful. And, you know, when we talk about, as you just did, define what resiliency is, redefining it, acknowledging it, but having the right mindset to get through it.
Right.
So let's talk about that for a moment. Okay. You know, especially as a woman of faith, you know, we rely on God, but at the end of the day, we're still human.
Right.
You know, we're still going to have doubts in our minds or whatever the case may be. But what would you say to our listening audience in regards to the mindset and what the mindset can actually do for us?
I think people have to understand that your mind is the one safe space that you have, that you can totally control whether you allow somebody else to penetrate it.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
We can control whether the words of our parents, our kids, our neighbors, whomever, whether we allow those words to enter our souls and fixate on us. Because we decide whether that person is going to define us or not. Yeah. So that mindset is about you having a very clear definition of who you are. Right. Not just whose you are, but who you are.
Right.
And in understanding who you are, let's just be real. You got to have earthly and godly answers. Like you need a balance of both.
Yes.
And so oftentimes, I know for me, being a clinician and not necessarily always indoctrinated in my practice in necessarily what the Bible may say.
Right.
That sometimes causes conflicts with those of us that are struggling, right? That are facing those challenges because we feel like maybe we're not being faithful enough, and that's why things aren't moving for us. But have you gone to the doctors?
Right.
Like, I get that you've prayed. I'm with all of that.
Yes.
But have you gone to seek counsel, which is in the Bible? I'm pretty sure.
It does. It tells us to seek counsel, and it also tells that we are to seek wisdom. Wisdom. And how do we get that wisdom? Right. And God gives us individuals such as yourself who holds knowledge to help us get through those processes.
And I think it's also understanding, where do you think my gifts come from?
Right. They come from above.
Exactly.
Right.
I wouldn't be open to understand and to read you the way I can without even knowing your entire story if I wasn't getting a message from somebody.
Right.
You know, and so I think it's us getting past, really the mindset is our fears. Getting past the fear of being vulnerable, which I definitely battle, right? We all battle in different spaces. Getting past the fear of someone mistaking who we are as a weak person, but also getting past how we judge ourselves.
Right.
Because we are our own worst critics.
Yeah.
And so that mindset has to have a balance, and you have to be open mentally to embrace the fact that I am growing. And so therefore I expect to fall.
Yeah.
So that I have the opportunity to get back up.
Right.
And as I'm walking forward, you know what's happening? I'm no longer in the same position, space, or downward spiral that I was before, because I'm walking forward.
You know, you used something very powerful, or said something powerful, that we got to expect mistakes.
Oh, yes.
Sadly, though, whether it's our young people or even adults who have just been so driven that we have to be perfect, or we gotta constantly make people proud of us,
right? Prove ourselves.
To prove ourselves. And yet that becomes a barrier to our own selves, that we're not perfect,
right?
And we can make mistakes, but it's how we get through those mistakes.
Oh, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Because see, your body doesn't know the difference between good or bad stress.
Yeah.
It's stress. It's stress whether you're happy you're getting married or whether you're upset you're getting divorced. You're stressed.
Right.
It's not about the stress. It's about what you do with it, how you channel it. And many times we suppress it because the stress to us is the signal that we're weak.
Yeah.
Stress, anxiety, depression, those aren't signals of weakness. Those are spidey senses of saying, hello, yes, somebody come tap in.
Right.
Come get a girl. Somebody check on me when the last time you called.
Right.
Like, that is what that's about. We've got to reframe that narrative and understand that because of all that we deal with, because of the weights on our shoulders, whether they're metaphorical or real weights that are on our shoulders, that is going to compress us.
Yeah.
And it brings out emotions in us that maybe we didn't recognize, maybe we have never acknowledged before, but they're here now and they're real.
Yeah.
So you got to do something with them.
So one of the things that I noticed that you do, you exercise. What is some things that people can do in order to help with that stress or anxiety or things like that to help them? What can they do?
I think that, physical fitness is always a main thing. Going for walks is always great. But I kind of want to touch on some other areas that people don't realize are helpful. Disconnecting from what is causing you the stress in the first place is vital. And what I mean by that is many of us are working from home, doing things of that nature. Getting outside, putting your feet in the grass is a whole vibe.
Yeah.
It allows you to escape the walls, the computers, and the demands of the emails, even if it's for 5 minutes. If you're in the medical field, duck off in that broom closet. I'm being so sincere because my medical people know what I'm talking about. Duck off in that broom closet, grab you some lavender, okay, and just put it underneath your nose and just take 5 minutes.
Yes.
And just think about the fact that every day you make changes in people's lives. No matter how that head nurse and charge nurse just got on your nerves, baby, keep it moving.
It's that taking time to meditate.
It's taking a moment.
Yeah.
And in that moment, bringing something of joy, of peace, and of calm. It could be chocolate. It could be banana chips. It could be a picture of your dog. It could be whatever it is. But you taking that moment to have peace and to focus in on yourself. Again, 3 minutes. And that can totally reset, because what it's doing is it's interrupting the cycle of anxiety, the cycle of depression, the cycle of anger and frustration that is about to stir in you, that stirs in you every day around this time.
Yeah.
So you've got to interrupt that.
Absolutely.
And just kind of escaping for a second helps for you to do that.
So let's talk about thriving and empowerment before we go. We got, I just want to touch on that for your listening audience. So talk about thriving.
I think thriving is the main lesson to take from that is when we are talking about what we went through, we can't talk about it like a woe is me story. Like, oh girl, what I went through, I can't believe I got over that, honey, he brought me through. We have to be like, girl, do you know he brought me through? And do you know what he brought me through with? And do you know I'm carrying that with me right now, honey? Because that's what your resilience is. Remember, your thriving is your ability to recognize that you're no longer being victimized in that situation.
Yes.
Because you've survived.
Yes.
Now you're thriving. Surviving is like a day-to-day thing. We're trying to make it. But thriving is when you take those lessons from the day-to-day and use those to propel you forward.
Yes. And then we talk about the empowerment. That's one of the things that I just admire you for, because you do empower women. But talk about that for us.
My empowerment piece is being a high achieving woman myself. I understand the imposturing.
Yeah.
I understand the self-doubt, guilty, been there, done that, both hands raised.
Yeah.
And I know all the reasons why I did it. Work-life balance, stepping up into areas that weren't made for me, carving out a path that wasn't designed for me. So the empowerment piece is I teach women how to create their own blueprints and allow them to process their strengths, speak their truth, learn how to redefine resiliency, but step into spaces and even pivot out of spaces if that's what they need to.
Absolutely.
In order to find balance in their lives.
Wow. When I think about that for a moment, as women, we're not just mother, we're not just wife, many of us, or partners in a relationship, trying to be all of that for a job, but then trying to still find who we are, our own identity.
Exactly. Which we lose sometimes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I can remember when my children were grown and I was like, what do I do now?
Right.
That truly redefining yourself. Yeah. So I thank you so much for just touching on the empowerment piece, because when we know more, we do more, or when we know more, we grow even more.
Absolutely.
So thank you. How can people reach you? How can they, get your book? Oh my gosh, your books, not just books, but books.
Well, my books are, The Hangover is available on Amazon. So you can go, look up The Hangover, it's right there. But they can follow me on my social media. Smile Psychology and Associates is available. It's at Smile Psych LLC. They can also look for me at Dr. East Speaks, which is at Dr. East Speak. Or just Google my name, honey, Dr. East, to figure out all the things that I'm doing, because I have my hands in many spaces, because many spaces need the healing.
Absolutely. Well, I hope you were encouraged by this message of faith, hope, and love. And I want to personally thank you for tuning in to this episode of Wake Up with Edie Darling, titled Redefining You with Dr. Carleah East. If you have a unique story of how you or your community turned a negative situation around through faith, hope, and love, I would like to hear from you. Email me at awakenyourdormantgifts@gmail.com. And don't forget to follow me on social media. Also, if you feel your community, business, organization, or government entity are stuck and can't seem to move forward for the sake of all, and you desire a peaceful resolution, I am here for you. Now, before we end this episode, I would like to leave you with this parting prayer. Father God, we come seeking you right now. Reintroduce yourself to your people, Lord. Teach us your ways. Reveal yourself to us like only you can. Open our eyes to receive truth, that truth which sets captives free. For who the Son sets free is free indeed. Awaken our gifts, Lord. Provide us with wisdom, knowledge, and understanding when life's journeys becomes difficult. Your word says in Deuteronomy 4, verse 30 through 31, when you are in distress and all these things come up upon you in the latter days, when you turn to the Lord your God and obey his voice, for the Lord your God is a merciful God. He will not forsake you, nor destroy you, nor forget the covenant of your fathers, which he has sworn to them. Help us to establish a personal relationship with you, Lord. Allow us to distinguish your voice from that of our own, so that we may clearly know the shepherd's voice. Build us up, Lord. Protect us and guide us daily. Father, we pray. Amen.